Okay. Okay. So we are on air right now. Hello, everyone. My name is Carlos, and I am currently your SCORA director in the IFMSA, the International Federation of Medical Students Associations. And today it's a very special day, not because, well, it's Friday, thank God, but also because we're having a great, this webinar, which is very interesting for our work within SCORA and our work within the sexuality, gender identity kind of focus that people have at home. And this week, in Wednesday, we celebrated IDAHOT, right? Which is the International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia, Biphobia, LGBT phobia, all of the phobias that we hate and exclude our people. So yeah, we celebrated a day in which, let's say, we won kind of one little, battles that we have within this war of stigma and discrimination. But yeah, we want to, let's say, keep on celebrating every single day of the year. And that's why we're having this celebration even extended, let's say. We want to have more days of this party, so we extended it until Friday, because Friday, it's a day to party, legitimately. So I have today with me a very guest for everyone in SCORA, but also the IFMSA, and it's Fidan. I really don't know how to pronounce your last name, actually. It's Shenova. Is that it?
It's exactly it. Shenova.
Shenova. Okay. Fidan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. Happy to be here. And Idaho is a very, for all of us, globally, to, show our support and to show our work and celebrate the extended party. My name is Fidan Shenova. I'm a 23-year-old medical student from Cyprus, actually, but I study in Turkey. I've been involved in this field, trying to do what I can to help support LGBTQ people's rights. And I've had the chance to work with Carlos before, and it was such a great time. And I'm really happy to be here today to talk to you about the transgendered issue today.
Awesome. Okay, so just for everyone to know, we are inaugurating kind of today a Smash webinar. So we are accepting any types of questions through the Google form link that I have shared in the SCORA Facebook and email groups. So we're going to have two parts. First, Fidan is going to chat a little bit with us about gender affirming kind of procedures or options that we have today, kind of to gain knowledge about it. And then we are going to talk, kind of respond a little bit to your questions. So there's no right or wrong question. We just want to, well, if you are not being respectful with your questions, well, yes, these questions are not okay. But if you're being respectful, there's no right or wrong questions. And if we don't know the answer, we'll try to search it for you right here, right now. And if we can't solve it during the length of this webinar, then we will try to approach it, respond to you at home, etc. Okay, so without further introduction, this topic has been longly discussed by the medical community. We do not have, let's say, a lot of projects internationally within the IFMSA specifically tackling kind of barriers that we find in gender affirming procedures or strategies, etc. So that's why we also want to give it a little bit more light, because there's a lot of people that also have questions about it. So probably having Fidan here with us, we solve some of these bits and pieces. So Fidan, you may start.
Okay. I want to start, first of all, with the definition of sex and gender, because when you say transgender, people think of a lot of different things, and I kind of want to first. When we talk about sex in a medical setting, we generally talk about the sex of the person that is assigned at birth. Like when a person is born, the doctor takes a look at their genitals and goes, this is a girl or a boy. You are assigned to at birth. And then there are people whose sex cannot be determined, which at birth, which are assigned the sex intersex until well, take some courses. That's a different issue. We can have your own identity, which is the gender that you identify as, which can be male, female, which does not have to correlate at all with your gender, which is how you dress and the way you express yourself. It's a whole spectrum from feminine to masculine and whatever. It can be vary, or it's about who exactly. So today we're going to talk about transgender surgeries, which usually trans women and men take. And for more clarification, trans women are people who are assigned male at birth, and they identify, well, they are through these procedures. And trans men are people who are assigned female gender at birth, but they are male and they go through these procedures. I want to specify that not everyone wants to go through these surgeries and not everyone has to go through them. It's a very important point that no matter how your body looks, no matter how your body feels, the most important thing is the gender the person identifies with. So today I will be talking about a lot of surgeries to change the appearance of a person's body. But I want you to know that if you are a trans person and you don't want to go through with these surgeries, that doesn't make you any less of a trans person. It's just your personal choice and it should be respected. Most trans people start this process by a hormone replacement therapy, which there's two parts of it. Like one part is suppressing the hormones that you have in your body, like for trans women suppressing the androgen, and for trans women, trans men suppressing the estrogen and progesterone hormones. This is an important part because these hormones generally shape the secondary sex characteristics of our bodies, like our skin and the fat distribution of our bodies. So hormones and taking other hormones, testosterone or estrogen, we can start changing the outer appearance of our bodies. For trans men, testosterone is generally applied intramuscular injections. There's various methods. You can get an injection once a month. You can get an injection every 3 months. There are implants that is applicable in some parts of the world. The way the hormones are applied can change a lot depending on the country and what is legal or not. But generally, it's an intramuscular injection. Trans men start taking this hormone, their voice goes deeper, their fat distribution changes type to the androgynous type, which is generally for people who are estrogen dominant, their fat deposits near their legs and butt area. But when the androgen hormones are dominant, it's in the stomach area. So that change starts happening. And testosterone stimulates beard growth and definition and body hair in various parts. So this is the first thing that many trans men do. And for trans women, and estrogen hormones. This usually comes in the form of pills, but there's also injection forms of this as well. It varies a lot based on your current health status and current situation and your own choices, because most people preferences. Some person, it's easy for them to take a pill every day, but others forget it, and that can cause hormone imbalances, which can be like hard on a person's psychology. So they prefer injections, which is more difficult to forget. And with these, their skin changes and their body hair starts thinning out a little. But I have to point out that women to have a bigger difference with only the hormone therapy. This is mainly because of the way the human body is structured. in the womb, everyone starts out the same way, regardless of their chromosomes. And with the introduction of testosterone, the fetus changes into a more male shape and becomes whether the Y chromosome is. So the bodies of people with, they come from the same source. And with the introduction of testosterone to a body we call female, this is only to specify is male or female, but for a person with a vagina and a clitoris and like a traditional female body, with testosterone, it's really easy to stimulate the changes, but those are usually not easily reversed, which is why trans women have a more difficult time getting hormones only. After the hormone treatment, most people experience a lot of mental changes, like their psychology. They have, with testosterone, anger bursts can happen, and with estrogen, more sensitivity and a lower libido, because of the androgen suppressants as well, can happen. And these can cause a lot of problems in their interpersonal relationships in most parts of the world, because most doctors are not specifically trained in transgender health, and they look at it as a puzzle to solve rather than a person whose life is changing. And in my country, in Turkey as well, it's not common to suggest any kind of help in this psychological department. They mostly focus on the physical stuff. After this, there is top and bottom surgeries that trans people can have. For trans women, they can have a mammoplasty to have like a breast enhancement. Men, a mastectomy to remove their breast tissue. Mammoplasties are widely administered surgeries because a lot of cis women, which is non-trans women, get these too. So there are a lot of doctors who are more skilled in the application of this. And although it can be difficult to go through at first, because it is a foreign thing implanted into the body, so it can be stressful, but the success rates are very high, and the end outcome looks really pleasing to most trans women who get the surgery. For trans men, the mastectomy, generally mastectomies are, the surgeries happen when people have some sort of problems in their breasts, and general surgeons are the ones who remove the breast tissue, which is why they're not really sensitive when it comes to the cosmetic appearance, which is important for trans men who would like to go topless outside. Of course, there are plastic surgeons who work on this as well, but people who are, and the surgeries are getting better every year. The scars are less visible now, and the healing times are better, and for techniques are developing in order to give even less scars. Like one of the ones that I'm really fond of and I want to improve is that they do the incision around the nipple to remove the breast tissue, and they take out less tissue this way usually, but since the incisions are around the nipple, it's not really visible post-surgery. Or they do it on the side of the breast, or under the breast. There can be like various, but they all have their pros and cons. I personally want the nipple surgery to get better because it's the most cosmetically appealing. After these, we have the bottom surgery. Now, for the bottom surgery, we have a lot of options and a lot of growing options. For trans women, first we have to do a panectomy, which is the removal of the penis, and an orchiectomy, the removal of the testes. The removal of the testes is important because testes is where the testosterone hormone is secreted. So when you remove that, you essentially take out the place where all of the androgen hormones change the body, which is a shock to the body at first, but you can make up for it with the estrogens and the other hormones that you take, and it can give easier transitioning to the secondary sex characteristics. For trans women, again, and then there's the vaginoplasty surgery, which is basically creation of an artificial vagina, which is called a neovagina, a neovagan. This is the root of the penis where it's removed has a lot of nerve endings, and they keep that part near the top, so a trans woman with a neovagina can still have pleasure, sexual pleasure. And the surgery can be a little taxing because the inside of the neovagina doesn't have the same kind of tissue as a cis woman's vagina, which is more flexible, and it's a kind of different. It has a mucosal layer. It's kind of wet, and it has a different kind of protection method for itself. For a woman with a neovagina, there's phases that you go through after the surgery. First is dilation to increase the volume of that neovagina in order to give a sexual intercourse. And you have to be very careful about the cleaning and how you take care of the area, because you don't have the regular kind of bacteria, the good kind of bacteria living there. So you have to be very careful and very good with the cleaning. But the success rates are improving because this is not a new surgery. The methods are changing and they're improving, but it's not a new surgery, so it's still it's being worked on for a long time. For trans men, there's the phalloplasty and metoidioplasty. Now, metoidioplasty is genius, and I will talk about that after phalloplasty, but that's my preferred method. With the phalloplasty, what you do is there's different methods for it, but one of them is a radial flap surgery. They take the skin and some muscle tissue around this area of your arm. And, they make that into a penile shape, and since it's your own muscle tissue and it's your own body, there is like a very low chance of rejection. Well, it's still there, but it's lower because it's your own body. And then they implant that where the clitoris is. What they do is they also create testicles from the labium majus. So they take out all of the uterus and the ovaries. This is not necessary, but it's commonly applied. In some parts of the world, including Turkey, you have to be sterilized to go through these surgeries. So here, at least, we have to take out all of the ovaries and the uterus. But I know that in some parts of the world, they still keep it. We do here, we take out all of the uterus and the ovaries, and we close up the vaginal opening. We make like testicles from the labium majus, like the lips of the vulva, and we put the penis that we made from the arm where the ending of the clitoris is. Now, the clitoris is very rich when it comes to nerve endings, so this neopenis also has a lot of well, not a lot of sensitivity actually, but it's still, you can still feel it, and it's still, you can feel the pressure, and the pressure is where the clitoris is. So there's a lot of joy you can get from sexual intercourse as well, because quite a lot of trans people care about the looks, but the sexual intercourse part and the sexual pleasure part is also, so we need to kind of level out everything in order to give the person the best life that they can live. And there's a lot of ways to make this input. The penis is always kind of semi-hard, which is enough to have sexual intercourse. That is one method. Another method is the pump. When we take out the uterus from the body, there's a gap there. So they put in a pouch with a special kind of liquid in it, and that is linked to the penis, which is linked also to the scroll that we made. It's literally a pump mechanism. So when you squeeze the testicles, it activates the pump, and the penis gets erect, and you can have sexual intercourse. And there, you can also like get it, flaccid again and use it like this. It can stay in there for a long time, and it doesn't cause any like adverse reactions. These are all special pouches and liquids. This is also what people do. And in some hospitals, in some parts of a bone to make the penis hard. They usually take the fibula, like the small bone from your leg, and a part of it, and they use that to make it as the scaffolding for the penis to hold around, so it's rigid and you can have intercourse. You can also take the flesh, not from the arm but from the leg, and there's various places you can do it. People ask about the size sometimes. Generally, if it's bigger, the circulation is difficult, so they try not to make it a very big penis, but like the national average and maybe slightly larger. 10 centimeters is acceptable for intercourse. So that's usually the minimum that people go for, 10 to 12 centimeters, but it can vary depending on your body and depending on the structure. Then there's also metoidioplasty, which is my personal favorite, and this is what I want to do with my work as a plastic surgeon, and I want to improve metoidioplasty and these other operations that I'm talking about today. With metoidioplasty, what they do is the clitoris, which I have mentioned before, is like an analog hormone to the analog organ to the penis. It develops from the same bud in the womb. So there's a little ligament holding it inside, and there's a hood over it. So what they do is they cut that hood and they allow the clitoris to hang outside because it's much bigger than it looks from the outside. It has a lot of internal structure, and it's a very sensitive and erectile organ, just like the penis. When a person is aroused, like the penis, it gets erect. So they take advantage of this. They release it, and then they inject the person with testosterone. It's the growth of that neopenis again. And I've seen some work that it can be at least about like 8 centimeters, 9 centimeters, which is very big. And it is a very like sexually sensitive organ, since you're not really changing the nerve structure, you're even stimulating it. So the person can still have a lot of sexual pleasure, and they still have a much bigger penis. And I'm calling it a penis because it is a penis at this point. And urine, which you call opening under the clitoris, the urethral orifice, it kind of moves up as well when this clitoris is growing into the penis. So they can actually pee standing up as well, which is also a plus for a lot of trans men. And just like the phalloplasty, you can still take out the uterus and the ovaries and do the scrotum surgery the same way as that. And you can have a very functional and very pleasing end result of this surgery, which is a bonus. So these are the main types of surgeries, the top and bottom surgeries, but there's a lot of side things that trans people sometimes choose to go through. For example, a rhinoplasty, a nose surgery, or a jaw surgery, laser epilation for when trans men start taking testosterone, their hairline recedes into the androgen pattern, like receding from here, and their facial hair starts growing in. But hormones are not enough to make the body hair and the facial hair go away completely. It makes them weaker, but they don't go away. So they generally choose to go through it or something like that. And for the jaw structure and the nose structure, which some people generally identify with certain genders, that's also a problem for some trans people, and they go through that. The jaw surgery specifically can be a little problematic, but I have seen some great results, and this is done by either plastic surgeons or jaw surgeons, like a side specialty of dental medicine. Will do. And after all of these surgeries, people have scars on their bodies, and especially trans men with the chest scars. Some of them choose to get tattoos over them. Some of them go through a different kind of laser treatment to get the scars removed, and there are some really great results for that too. So yes, these are the basics of the process. And again, I want to mention that you don't have to get any of these. You don't have to feel like any of them. I personally identify as a non-binary person. I don't call myself a man or a woman. And the non-binary falls under the trans umbrella. I don't have any desire to go through any of these surgeries, and this doesn't make me any less of a trans person. And also, you can choose to go through some of these surgeries without identifying as anything. There are a lot of non-binary people who simply choose to go through the mastectomy alone because they're not comfortable with their breasts, or people who get some of the surgeries but not the others. This is completely valid. It is your own body, and you have the right to choose whatever is right and best for you yourself. That's a very important point. Now, as you've realized, I've talked through a lot of steps, and this is a very long process. It can take years and years of a person's life. And one of the biggest problems is that medical training on this. As we were researching last year with Carlos and the IFMSA team, we found out that these don't talk about these things. They don't even acknowledge that it's a thing, let alone give education and training on how to do them. And most of the places that did have information were Northern European countries, which is, again, a problem for trans people worldwide. And since doctors are not trained, and medicine is a very hierarchical and very strict profession in many parts of the world, people tend to learn from someone above them, and then they copy that kind of behavior. And a lot of doctors are unintentionally transphobic, and some are directly transphobic, which is problems for trans people when they want to visit a doctor to start this procedure or see how they're going. Which is why in many countries in the world, including in Turkey, we do this. We have lists of doctors who are safe to visit. It is very important because when you go to a hospital, the secretary working there, and the nurses and the doctors and the caretakers and the personnel and hundreds of people who can be homophobic and transphobic and treat you in a problematic and damaging way. And it's very important to know the rights and know your legal rights in the country. And because people don't have the right to just look at you as a piece of experiment, and they need to treat you as a human being with rights. And you always have the right to refuse a person being in the room if they're making you uncomfortable. You have the right to seek doctors who are right for you and they treat you well. Subject, and we're trying. Like a lot of people are trying to make the situation better, and doctors are better than before. I don't want to bash my own profession. I'm very happy to be a doctor, but to become a doctor soon. But we need to accept that it comes from a normative point of view. In medicine, we look at things, and there's a normal setting for a person to be, for everything, for how their body looks, for their lab values, for their screenings, and it's hard to accept that a deviation from that can also be, well, I don't want to use the word normal, but healthy and acceptable. So it's really important. As I mentioned in the beginning, the hormone treatment, really start that before all of the surgeries, because it's an easier and less invasive thing you can do to yourself, and it helps you blend in with the public, because one of the problems that most trans people face is being identified, being misgendered and being identified as a trans person out on the streets. At least that's the situation in Turkey and a lot of countries that I know of. And that can cause a lot of social problems. That can hinder you from getting work, that can stop you from going to school, it can cause problems with your family and friends. It makes that easier. It helps you kind of blend in more and makes people notice you less, which can help your academic, professional, and personal life. There's nothing wrong with not fitting in and not looking like I personally live somewhere in the middle, as you can see from my video. But if a person wants to be able to do that, they should have the right, and we should provide the necessary healthcare for them. I'm going to make one last point, and then I guess we can go to the questions. When a trans person experiences, or a non-binary person, they experience a headache, a nosebleed, and they go to a doctor, they're usually up differently. They look at the patient and they see it's a trans person, and they think it's related to that, so they don't treat them well, even though their problem doesn't have anything to do with their transitioning process. They still approach it like that. Can be a problem for people who have some of the surgeries and their body is identifiably different, and enough for a doctor to understand that they're not a cisgender person. This can be avoided in some clinics in the hospital, but for most of them you go through a full checkup, and that can be problematic, which is why sensitivity training in hospitals is definitely necessary. And the legal situation in the countries is very important as well. In Turkey, people can change their identity cards, like their IDs, because in Turkey they're colored. For women they have pink, and for men they have blue. It sounds ridiculous, it's like a 2-year-old, but it's the situation. But at least people have the right to apply to the court to get it changed. But the court has a lot of for it, like you being sterilized, like you going through this hormonal process and meeting with a psychiatrist so that they can say, yeah, this person is really transgendered and not just playing around, I guess. It's a humiliating process for some people, but at least it gives them the right. And this is also a very important point, because in order to get, for example, after surgery, for a trans woman, after the vaginoplasty, there can be a lot of complications. It may not be dilating right. The stitches on the inside could be problematic. You could get an infection. You could have their intercourse. And the person that needs to see that is either the surgeon or a gynecologist. But most gynecologists don't know how to treat trans people, so it becomes a problem. And again, for trans men, especially in countries where they don't have to be sterilized, I'm sure some of you have seen on the news where some trans men have given birth in the past. They still have their uterus, they still have their ovaries, and their wives, like I've read 2 stories about this, and in both of them, their wives' uterus wasn't functioning properly, like it couldn't carry a pregnancy, so they gave birth instead. And things like this can be very taxing for everyone involved, because the hormonal structure is completely different and the doctors don't know what to do, and the person can experience a lot of transphobia. But in both of these stories, they were very happy and they have 2 children, and I wish the best for them. Yes, that's about it. These are the basics that I wanted to talk about, but of course there could be something that I've missed. If you want to ask anything at all, you can ask. Like Carlos said before, there are no right or wrong questions. As long as you're respectful, you can ask anything that you're curious about, and we'll try to answer you as well as we can. Thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you so much, Fidan, for this. This was, I think, very illustrative, and people like we can dig into it. Now we're going to hit some of the questions that like appeared, not only about this topic specifically, but just kind of like LGBT and Q plus,
Sure.
plus, and other things that may go like through people's minds. So I wanted to thank kind of like the people that submitted questions. Since this is like our first try, we also are, I mean, at least I'm very kind of like pleased to see that there are questions I wasn't expecting. And yeah, because I didn't know if people were going to like it or etc. So we're going to try to. There are actually kind of like some 10 that we could that subscribe, but I'm going to go like kind of like one by one in order. Okay, so the first question is from a SCORA angel in Nigeria. Okay,
Uh-huh.
so the question is, what is like to be a student from the LGBTQ plus community?
Mhm.
That is very interesting. I don't know. Would you like to go first?
Sure. Well, it can be difficult when my patients can't tell if I'm a man or a woman. They look at me and they want to sir or miss, and they don't know what to do. So they're just like, they call me a doctor, like just like classmates. I have had some problems, especially since Turkey is becoming an increasingly religious place. There's a lot of people that come from a religious point with homophobia, but I've always been out. My family knows that I'm queer, which is why I have to be out medical faculty as well. So they don't have a lot of leverage against me, but they
Yeah.
try. They try to, make comments, etc. But they're like, "Oh, what are you, a fag?" I'm like, "Yeah, I am a fag. Yes." So I respond to it
That
like
as
that.
well.
But with the patients, it's
Well,
been very good.
yes, it has.
Yeah, yeah, and they're really funny because they look at me and they think I'm a man, and then they try to set up their daughters with me because I'm a young, eligible. Find out that
Oh,
I'm a woman,
oh my God.
and then they're like, "Okay, so this person is not a man," and they're like, "Well, I have a son too." It's nice, and the teachers are very good. A lot of my professors have actually asked me whether I want to go by Mr. or Miss. They showed that. Which is something that I didn't expect, and I was really shocked. But it's good. Like I haven't had a lot of problems in the hospital.
Well, to be honest, I haven't either. Kind of like, I mean, I've never suffered, let's say, like hard on. I mean, of course, we suffer some kind of discrimination,
Yeah,
in the, in the more subtle ways. But
yeah.
I've never suffered kind of like, face-to-face discrimination by my teachers mainly, which is a good point. It though, I mean, I did though like have heard kind of like harsh comments, kind of like on where should we go, like until what point can an LGBT person a doctor, like um, let's say scientifically
Mhm.
based and serious doctors. So kind of like that also shows us that medicine as such as it is conformed today, it is a little bit stiff on,
Yeah.
and very conservative in what can a doctor be, who can the other people, who can. I think that is the important part, like recognizing kind of like that someone different than you can be someone that can help you on a date.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I've only suffered kind of like a one episode in which a patient didn't want me to do rectal examination on him because yeah, because he thought, well, I of course, like it's not like I tell everyone I'm gay, but yeah, like I don't hide it either. So yeah, probably kind of like the guy, like already said like, this guy is the gay guy, and therefore he cannot touch my ass. And I'm like, honey, I've touched more than you can ever know about. I have much more practice than the other members in the room. So so yeah, that was, I think, the only right. But yeah, I think it's a work of making alliances with the other LGBT students that you find in order to make a coalition and show everyone that you can also study hard, you can also get medical knowledge and get
Yeah.
far like them. So yeah.
Yeah, I think so too.
Okay, so let's go to the next question. Okay, so this is a question from our members in Spain. So it's how to start to advocate for LGBTQ plus rights. So
Okay.
okay, I'm going to start with this one. So I think the best way to start is, well, kind of like in everything in life, we start with visibility, kind of like talking about it, like not being afraid to ask, not being afraid to, um, yeah, kind of like search for information, but never be kind of like assumptive. You know, I think that's the most thing that people should take care of when they start kind of like, you know, advocating and things, because you're already, when you start, for example, you find a first research paper about gender affirming procedures or something, and you take that as a general truth, but then we always need to find that we're constantly changing and constantly. So the first thing is that, like, ask and talk about it, but knowing that it might change tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, then I think the second most important part is to ask the community. Like, if you have a question about you know, like trans identities, or, you know, gender non-binary expression, then you go to non-binary people that be, you know, a more let's say valid and truthful source of information than any other blog that you can find over Tumblr. And so, yeah, I think that is more or less like how to start. Let's say how to develop. It's a bit, let's say there are many more ways. How to start would be, I would start like that.
Yeah.
What about you, Philip?
That's a very good point, because you need to always ask the people involved. Like this past year, I started trying for intersex rights, and I'm not an intersex person, so I had to reach out to them and ask them personally how they want to be treated. What are the problems? So that's a very, very good point. Also, start and get circle, because we all of us in the world, we grow up in a heterosexist community. It's everywhere in the world, like to some, and we have internalized things like jokes that we laugh at and comments that we make. We don't even realize it. I had this, everyone had this when they were growing up, and we need to be aware of that. Like, for example, changes was when I'm asking a patient about their significant other, I don't say wife or husband anymore. I asked about their partner. Not their girlfriend, but boyfriend, but partner. Which is, it's a very simple change, but it makes a lot of difference for that person. And it's not difficult for you. A lot of people, men, like heterosexual men especially, they make a lot of homophobic jokes and transphobic jokes. Like transphobic jokes about tall women, for example. Or I didn't know if it was a he, she, and like,
Fidan, are you there? Okay, let's wait just to. Fidan,
hey, Carlos.
you there?
Yeah, I'm back.
Oh,
Can you
okay.
see me?
Awesome. But I can hear you.
Okay, that's okay. I'm back, I think. So what was it? I was saying that we need to start with our immediate circle, because our friends are the people most likely to listen to us. So we can start by educating ourselves, like you said, by going to the appropriate sources, the people themselves, and if it's medical stuff, like current research and new stuff that people are doing. Because when you look at 1985, you can find a lot of medical articles that are homophobic.
Yeah, of course.
And this one teacher was arguing a very homophobic point to me by using an article from 1994. And I'm just sitting there and I'm like, it's 2017. That is not valid anymore. There is so much more research after that. So you can't really use that. Everything can change in medicine, and we need to accept that. And so, yeah, so you need to start with yourself and your family. Learn as much as you can. Talk to as many people as you can. And look about your field, like whatever your job is, look into that, the problems that LGBTQ people face. You could be a lawyer, or you could run a little store, you could be an engineer. Like, try to find the problems and identify them and try to work towards them.
Awesome. Thank you. So the next question is from a member, also in Europe. So can gay people be homophobic?
Question.
I think you can start with this one.
I like this question. Gay people can be very homophobic. One of the most homophobic. Like, some of the most homophobic people I know are gay themselves. This is, I think it comes from multiple views. Like, first of all, when you grow up in a homophobic society, if you're a man especially, because there's a lot of pressure on men to not be homosexuals, because it's a male society, and being homosexual is one of the most embarrassing things to be, because of its significance to being a woman. That actually comes from sexism, but that's a different point. So there's a lot of pressure on men to be masculine, manly, and not gay. And when they realize that they have an attraction towards other men, they try to compensate for it by being aggressively masculine. They're louder, they work out more, they yell at gay people more, they're more vocal about their homophobia, because they're fighting an inner battle and they're trying to present themselves in a certain way. There's actually research on this. Like, this is not just my opinion. There has been, I think it was in Canada, I'm not sure, but I will look for it and I can post a link later to the SCORA page. They put a bunch of men in a room and they gave them cards to fill out, like a homophobia scale. And then they showed these people pictures of heterosexual sex and homosexual sex, like pictures, like short videos, that kind of stuff. And while they were doing this, they looked for their heart rates and how their body responded, like their pupils and their heart rates, etc. And the people who scored the highest on the homophobia scale also reacted more to the homosexual porn.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I think it was in Canada, but I'm not sure, so I'll look for it. And I was not even surprised when I saw this, because they try to compensate to maintain their social status and their image. They may not be conscious of this. This is not just actively knowing that you're gay and like trying to hide it. It also happens subconsciously a lot. And they're trying to like suppress their own thoughts and feelings, sort of thing. So I think it's very possible for gay people to be homophobic and transphobic.
I think even when I think that phase you described is a lot of what I've seen with many people that like are in the closet, as we did. They're not openly, homosexual. But I think definitely like anyone can be kind of homophobic or transphobic or biphobic. Like, it depends on more or less kind of like, as you said, how is the the chain going on, how's the context at the time. Even when we're out of the closet and very assumed very things, we do have some let's say respect attitudes or comments, like I would say mainly towards what's feminine, so everything that's feminine is kind of like wrong, right? So we put ourselves kind of like on that point, that a society that you find yourself like kind of like benefiting women is not that great. So we also, even within the gay community, like sometimes we also judge much harder, let's say, like gay guys, for example, that are much more feminine or have a higher pitch voice or have not that muscle figure, and these kinds of things. And that tends us to even be aggressive towards other members from the LGBTQ plus community. Like, for example, trans women, there's, well, I don't, like, everybody knows RuPaul's Drag Race, like, that is, of course, like, very funny, amazing, and we have, like, a lot of time, but there's also some of the things that, like, kind of, like, promote those gender roles, right? And stigma. Which is important, kind of like to be knowledgeable about, but I'm not talking only about kind of like gay guys, talking about kind of like the whole LGBT community LGBTQ plus community as a whole can be kind of like discriminatory for each other. And that is also something that we need to recognize in order to get better. I don't think we can't avoid that. And I also can't say or state that none of us, let's say, have ever experienced, you know, a homophobia or LGBT phobia from another member from the LGBT community. So that also happens. And it's self-destructive,
Yeah.
which is the sad part. I think we can also kind of like educate ourselves, educate our peers.
Yeah, I agree. And an important point is that especially some LGBT people think that it's better to blend in, and which is why like they are against feminine gay women, because it's the same with the lesbian and bisexual women community. Like on, you know, like the applications like the Grindr and Brenda and whatever,
Yes.
like they specifically write like masculine for masculine, like no butches, like that kind of stuff, because they want to remain hidden in society. And if you're not choosing to hide it, it's not even about hiding. If you are visibly gay, they're against it because they think that we portray the LGBT so by hairy big guy or a really feminine woman who puts makeup on. So there's that factor too. You're right. It's a very big, and it's not talked about enough, I think.
Okay. Okay, so I think actually the next question is, well, I mean, I kind of like know the theory behind it, but I think it's more for you, Fidan. The next question is from a person from the American. I'm very happy about this. The question is, what is the difference between queer and trans?
Well, there's a lot of actually different approaches to it, but basically, trans is when there is a and are assigned to a basic explanation, and it can get a lot theoretical and deeper. But basically, if you're assigned
Fidan, could you repeat?
birth,
You got cut, so I don't know if you could repeat, please. Is it because you got cut, like the connection got?
Sure, definitely. So trans is when a person accepts that there is a thing called gender, and then they identify as a person other than the gender they're assigned to at birth. So if not birth, but you are not a woman, you're trans. And in the past, people used to FTM or MTF, like male to female or female to male trans people. It used to be only that, but now definition also includes non-binary people who identify as like both genders or gender fluid, etc. That's one thing for trans. With queer, it's more about accepting that are not there isn't. This is a very broad subject. So queer, I'm just like kind of. It's more about rejecting all of these. Like personally, that's what I say I am. Like that's what I use, because I don't think that gender is a thing personally, and I don't identify as anything. For myself is my own name. I don't like gender or sexual orientation or descriptors are a thing, and I don't use them. Queer is not an identifier in itself. People used to use it as a different. So I'm a gay person, I'm a queer person, sort of thing. But as it is used now with the rise of the queer theory, it's more about rejecting all of these labels. It's not a label itself, but a way of thinking and approaching. And it doesn't only include sexuality and gender. It includes a lot of things that the society is view as normal and acceptable things to do. So people use it interchangeably, and a lot of people argue different points about this. But personally, I think that trans title and label is still when you accept certain things, certain concepts, move around in it, rather than queer, who thinks that the whole thing is irrelevant. But this is a personal opinion. Like I said, there's a lot of things being written about this, a lot of things that people can argue. Very important to read about it. I recommend Butler and Foucault.
I love both of them. Oh my God. Okay. So I think I can. Well, actually, we both can answer the next question. So the question is about the SCORA book, like the one that we did last year. Both Ethan and I are of the working team, together with marvelous Jenna, our IDAHOT campaign coordinator, and also a regional assistant for the Americas, and other members. So watching that don't know, we last year a guideline. Kind of like to implement LGBTQ plus health in medical curricula. And this guideline was just endorsed by WPATH, the World Professional Association for Transgender Health, which is very gratifying for us. Like, you know, this is a work 100% done by medical students, like no one else. And, you know, it's kind of like a great, well, like we feel very proud because there wasn't anything regarding that. So how to use it? I would start by saying that, well, first read it. I think that's the very good, you know, like that's a very good use for a booklet. Read it. It's made for you to read. But also, it divides itself in 6 chapters. Okay, it divides itself from the part where you start kind of like identifying the gaps that that you have in your own medical curricula, and start building from that point on, kind of like the specific skills and specific kind of like objectives you need to achieve before you graduate from med school, in terms of knowing, you know, how to deal, not to deal, but how to treat or how to talk with LGBTQ plus. It's very important for you to identify kind of like these objectives and goals, and then we give you examples from medical curriculums that have already been successful, and which you can contact, and also kind of like, of course, offering you the network of IFMSA into helping you with that. So I would say the first one, of course, the first way to utilize it is to read it, to gain knowledge from it. It is not a Bible, though. Like as well as Finan was saying, this is very like this is changing a lot of, like in many ways every single day. You know, there's new information that we can get, and there is, of course, like this is not made for you to copy it, is for you to kind of use it in the development of your own strategies, like with your own kind of like social context that go, like, you know, because it's different for me to implement it in Brazil, where I come from, or Fidan to implement it in Turkey. You know, there's different needs, there's different also gender identity, there's also different sexual orientations, there's also, you know, like since we're talking about a spectrum, we don't know if in every part of the world the same shadows of the spectrum rely on, and that this is why it's like it's important to understand that it's like a fixed thing. I think the second great use will be to present it kind of like to teachers, you know, teachers, colleagues, deans, for you, because it is also a source of information. Like we put in it information of all around the world into the needs of the LGBTQ plus community within this region, and therefore how, like, this is a type of advocacy in showing people why we need to invest into medical education, this subject specifically. And lastly, it is also very helpful to engage the LGBT community into your activities. When I showed it back at home, I like to divert NGOs that work with the trans community, that work with and even like the government, like the MSMGF representation of in Brazil. Like it was very gratifying for them to see that there's young people interested in developing these kinds of strategies, and that also opened like doors for us to make discussions, do webinars like this one, engage into new projects, talk with my NMO about kind of like, you know, what are the needs to, and what are the goals to reach with them. So it sets kind of like a common ground, a common interest that you have with a community. And finally, I think it is a very nice source of information in terms that it is done by members from the LGBT community that are medical students. and that you know, like, so it is kind of like a way as well that we got to involve the community that we have in IFMSA. Is also important for us to recognize that we also have LGBT people in the medical community. That, like, I've talked enough for that question. I don't know, Fidan, if you would like to add anything else.
No, I think you made like all of the most important points, and I want to emphasize what you said about cultures, and could not even think of them because it was out of my experience, and there was things happening here that people couldn't know, that you can't do everything in the guidebook, like one by one, but it's important to talk to local organizations, like present them with this, tell them that this is what you're working on and how it can be improved for your local region specifically. And like Carlos said, it's very important, like there's not a lot of LGBT doctor visibility. Because we mentioned medicine is a very stiff, a lot of parts of the people are afraid of being out because they think that it will hinder their career, and it can if you encounter the wrong kind of like higher up and try to make life very difficult for you. But that's not a rule. It does not have to be like that, and it's to be out and to take that risk, but the people take it, and the more the visibility increases, it helps other people as well. So loudly out, I have a rainbow pin on my white coat, like I'm really pushing it. Point. I'll show you. It's like a little rainbow. It's a unicorn with a rainbow like hair. I'm very serious about it, and to take that risk and to be out as well. Like I personally, if I had seen other doctors who were out, I would have been more confident earlier years of my education, because I'm almost at the end now.
Yeah, I totally agree.
You mean?
Okay, so for our next question, I have, I think one of the most polemic questions, I don't know if I can actually, like, well, I do kind of like have a theoretical kind of like basement on this, but my question, like my internal questioning is, why haven't we done something about this already? So the question is, what is gender dysphoria? And what is the relationship to gender affirming procedures, or gender affirming, or trans people, I would say. Like I would rephrase it to trans, which is the major tackle. So yeah, do you want to start?
Very sensitive topic.
Right.
Community, there's a lot of arguments and also discussions. So basically, the gender dysphoria, as a definition, is having an intense displeasure your own body as a result of the gender it's assigned to it. Like that's how it used to be in the DSM. It's about having, like, for example, for a person assigned female at birth, I'm a person assigned female at birth, having an intense, well, this and emotional with my body as I perceive it, like with my breasts, for example, or my vagina. So limited explanation, because it's a much more intense feeling than it comes out when I say it like this. And a lot of people, a lot of trans people as well, consider it to be necessary. As they say that if you don't, like if you don't have problems on this level, because dysphoria is a very serious level of discomfort. It's just like, oh, I don't like my tits. It's like actively experiencing like anxiety and depression, like that kind of severe symptoms associated these parts of your body. Other trans people who say that no, it doesn't matter if you experience dysphoria or not. Identification is enough. So there's that problem. It's necessary for a trans person to feel it or not. Are trans people. We can say that, but not the other way. Not every trans person feels it. And its relation with gender-affirming surgery, people who experience dysphoria are much more to go through with these surgeries because they're very displeased with the way that they feel their body is not the same as the way they see themselves. So to correct that discrepancy, experience less dysphoria by the way they go through with these surgeries. That's not necessarily the same for everyone, because as I mentioned in the very beginning, don't necessarily have to go through these surgeries to be called trans, but there is an outside pressure, people telling you you're not trans enough because you haven't gone through these surgeries. So may not be 100% interested, but they still kind of lean towards that. So yeah, it's a difficult thing to talk about, but I can say that it's a very serious that needs to be addressed, but it does not have to be addressed with surgery. These kinds of psychotherapy and getting to that in order to be the gender you identify as, like a man or a woman, you don't necessarily need a penis to be a man, and you don't need boobs to be a woman, that sort of thing. But this is for everyone, even with therapy. So yeah, it's a very personal decision, and it's a bad subject. I want to hear from you, Carlos, as well, because this is a very kind of topic.
Well, yeah, as Fidan was saying, kind of like there's still lots of debate around gender dysphoria. There's some people, for example, that gender dysphoria is kind of like corn, that doesn't exist. There's other people that defend kind of like very specific cases that can be applied or not. But today, kind of like, I think there is a fact in that not everyone who would like to go with gender-affirming procedures or necessarily suffer from this pathology. So that's kind of like the first point that that enters into my mind, is kind of like